The Ransom Center is not merely a library, it's not a museum, it's a research center, but it's also a great place for students. We have poetry readings, we have exhibitions. It's a center of learning. It's an opportunity to see so much of our culture. The opportunity to look at a first edition of The Great Gatsby, to read manuscripts of James Joyce, to look at poems that John Milton made changes in his own hand. These are the kinds of things that bring you close to a culture. The Watergate Papers, it's not a typical kind of collection that the Ransom Center would collect, but these papers were so much a part of American history. Woodward and Bernstein wanted them to come here, and for students to have the opportunity to study this material is wonderful.
In rehearsing the American Dream, Arthur Miller's theater here at the Harry Ransom Center, we have an extraordinary range of material. This is a reproduction of a short story Miller wrote in 1932 when he was 17. Miller forgot about this story, and after Death of a Salesman opened in 1949, his mother found it in their house and gave it back to Miller. And it's very clear as you read the story that it is exactly the forerunner to Death of a Salesman. Arthur Miller received this letter in 1994 from a man named Majid Hamid, who was a professor at a university in Basra. The envelope is handmade. It's 2 pieces of brown butcher paper held together with small pieces of orange tape. This was during Operation Desert Storm, and Hamid wrote Miller that they had no food, they had no medicines, their children were starving, but what they really needed, he said, was books. It was clear that to Hamid, those books were as important as food.
The exhibition that we have on view is called Dress Up, Portrait and Performance in Victorian Photography. Some of the more dramatic images in this exhibition are these 6 plates by Guillaume Duchesne de Boulogne, who was a French physician working with electricity. What Duchesne was trying to do was basically map the physiognomy of human emotion. He felt that people wouldn't be able to act those expressions out naturally, so he provided some external assistance, I guess you could say. Here we have 2 images by a very young Vietnamese-American photographer named Ben Don. He superimposes the negative on top of the leaf while it's still living, puts it out in the sun for a few days, and makes what we call a lithograph. He calls a chlorophyll print. There was a real boom in panorama photography in the 20s. Here we have the 4th annual Bathing Girl Review from Galveston, Texas in 1923. And it's an amazing slice of life of the times of the early 20s.
The Gutenberg Bible is the single most important rare book in the Ransom Center collections. Not all rare books are pretty books. This happens to be the extremely plain first edition of T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. It is inscribed by the author to E.P. Ezra Pound, Miglior Fabbro, which in Italian means the better craftsman. And we have the first edition, first published version of William Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. And it was printed in a quarto, small edition, which is the way plays appeared at this time. The cartographic holdings extend from the very first map in a book and incorporate just about every important early work of cartography.
We have somewhere around 10,000 posters and easily over 1 million film stills. A lot of movies from the drive-in era. As a poster for The Southerner, starring Zachary Scott, who grew up here in Austin. This is a lobby card for Teddy at the Throttle. One of Gloria Swanson's earliest films. It was a comedy with Bobby Vernon, and Teddy is the dog. This is a scene conception for Gone with the Wind, for the Atlanta Bazaar scene. The funny thing about this one is that there's a little menorah drawn on the table, probably as a joke for David O. Selznick's benefit. This is the dress that Scarlett wears to Melanie's birthday party. It's the burgundy ball gown. Of course, we have prints of most of Selznick's films, Spellbound, Gone with the Wind. We even have a print of King Kong. But some of the more interesting things in the Selznick collection are screen tests.
I have hopes of winning a scholarship.
I see. They have difficult examinations.
I have taken mine. Just today.
Today?
Yes.
Well, this is a great occasion. What are we drinking this for? Waiter, bring champagne, the best vintage of the best brand in your cellar.
These are two costumes from the Robert De Niro collection. This red suit is from The King of Comedy, and next to it was a donation from Paul Schrader, who wrote the screenplay for Taxi Driver. We have 64 interviews that Mike Wallace did in 1957 and 58 with people like Eleanor Roosevelt, Margaret Sanger, and recently Mike Wallace gave us permission to put the entire collection online. Anyone can come into our reading room and request anything in the film collection. We have screenwriters coming in to see the work of Ernest Lehman and J. Preston Allen. We have students, and we have the general public coming in.
We try to make these works live on the campus, and that's what happens here. If you can make your collections vital and alive and living and part of the cultural life of the institution, then you have succeeded. Then you have done something that really enriches the texture of the intellectual life of an institution. And that's one of the great purposes of the Ransom Center.